Hello there, it's your friend Phil, Project Management Trainer and Coach. Welcome to Project Management 101. What is project management? Project management is really the ordering, the structuring, the alignment, the management of ideas. That's really what it is. You got an idea. The idea, in order to make the idea reality, you got to break it into pieces that need to be executed. And those pieces, while being executed, need to be tracked. But they don't just need to be executed, they need to be executed well. Because you want an outcome, you want an output, you want that idea to be made a reality. So all these great ideas that we have, inventions, experiences, they all need to be managed. And that's really what project management is. It's the management of ideas. How do you manage ideas? You manage ideas with intentionality and focus. You manage ideas with tools. You manage ideas by being organized. If you're not organized, you can have all the ideas in the world. They will never come to fruition. If you do not act on your ideas, they'll just stay in your head, or they'll stay somewhere documented on paper. So it's not enough to be great at documentation. As a project manager, you also have to be great in executing. You have to execute on those ideas. You have to create traction and action for positive reaction from your stakeholders so they get engaged, so that they help you. You see, it's one thing to have the great idea, but it's another thing for other people to come along for the ride to help you execute those ideas. Steve Jobs had great ideas, but without Wozniak, where would he be? So we need the team. The power of the team is very important. No one ever did anything great alone, so we need the power of the team to help us. And when we talk about team, we could be talking about one person, two people like the Google boys, for example. But ideas just need to be acted upon. So you've got the team that needs direction, and that's why we need project managers. We need project managers to bring order, structure, action for positive reaction, traction, so that we get to the end goal and deliver that product, service, or result. That's really what it's all about. So everything in project management is geared towards delivering that end result. It could be a product, it could be a service, it could be an experience. See? A project results in an outcome, and that outcome is as a result of actions that are planned and carried out. And in some instances, the lack of action also produces a result, but an unfavorable result. So the project manager needs to create a plan for action, so that you can get traction on the project. Also, so that you can get stakeholders to react the right way, the right reaction for engagement. Some projects fail because people are not engaged. The people who should do the work are not motivated. They're not engaged. So being a project manager is a tough job, especially in instances where the vision hasn't been clearly cast. And that's why we need the beginning, the start of the project, to do that through a document that we call the project charter. The project charter is a document that casts the vision, helps people understand, why are we doing this thing? Where do I come into the picture? What's its relevance? That's the project charter. It's a simple document. It gives you an idea about what the project is, who is the project manager, and what are the key things we're meant to be achieving, and success criteria. How do we know that success has been achieved? The Sydney Opera House is regarded as a success, but it's also regarded as a failure in the eyes of some. Why? Because it was so many times over budget and so many years behind schedule. So some people counted it a failure. You see, in the eyes of different people, an outcome could be a success or failure, and that's why in the project charter we need to spell out very clearly what is success, what is failure, That is the 101 of project management. If you do not spell out success and failure up front, people aren't going to know if they hit success. So my advice to project managers is have a charter. That's the first thing you want to have a charter. Now, after you've got a charter that casts the vision, that's not enough. Because if you fail to plan, you're setting yourself up for colossal failure, flying by the seat of your pants type failure. So it's one thing to have your charter, but the next thing is to plan. Plan out everything that needs to be planned out. And you don't have to plan everything out like on day one. You can plan in iterations, which means you plan a little bit in the beginning, you observe the project, you glean data to see what's working and what isn't, what needs to be adjusted and modified, and then you plan some more. But you need to plan out in stages. I'll just give you an idea. You can plan out in weeks. You don't have to plan out so far out, like in months. You can plan out in weeks. You can plan every week, the week before. So as you're working on week 1, you're planning week 2. As you're working on week 2, you're planning week 3. That's one way you can approach planning. It doesn't have to be everything all at once. So my advice to you is, as a project manager, if you are on a project and you got crunch time, you need to start, then just start it and plan in an iterative fashion. You don't have to plan everything out all at once. Contrary to what a lot of people think, you don't have to plan everything out all at once. So plan in iterations, and before you know it, the project gets traction. Everything becomes very apparent, what you need to do, when you need to do it. Okay, I'm planning for the next week. Then you start the next week. Then you're planning for the week after that. And things just begin to align themselves. But you have to have a plan for how to manage your project. You need to have a plan for how the team will be involved in helping you do whatever you need to do as a project manager. Some project managers think they need to do everything alone. No, you don't need to do all the thinking alone, especially if you have a team at your disposal, subject matter experts. John Maxwell said a lot of his great thinking was done by others. Some of the greatest titles of his books, he did not create them. It was the team. So the power of the team and expert judgment is big. Don't ever think that you need to prove that you know it all. You need the team. You need the team to help you. So planning, like I said, could be done in an iterative fashion. And the question often is, okay, what is planned? At a minimum, at the very, very minimum, I would advise you to do some planning around scope. The word telescope. What does a telescope do? It helps you keep the scope in focus. That's exactly what scope management is. So if you haven't heard the term scope management, it's a set of processes whereby you identify the work that has to be done to get your deliverable. For example, if someone says, I want a chicken sandwich. Okay. Are there any special features in your chicken sandwich? Oh yeah, I want a chicken sandwich made from scratch. What do you mean by made from scratch? I don't want you to buy the bun. I want you to make the bun. I want you to farm raise the chicken. I want you to get the mayo made, not bought. I want you to grow the lettuce. Wow, okay. So you're talking about a 3-month endeavor? Because I can't churn out lettuce in 2 days or 1 day. So you're telling me that this is going to be a 3-month or 6-month endeavor? Well, whatever it takes, that's what I want. That's what the stakeholder says. Do you see how that identification of scope has now given you a picture of the work that needs to be done to deliver the deliverable? The deliverable is just a chicken sandwich, but the work that has to go into making a chicken sandwich from scratch, my goodness. You see the difference between a deliverable versus scope? Scope is the work that you need to do, especially when we say project scope. Project scope is the work you need to do to deliver the product. So you need to deliver a chicken sandwich, but it has to be made from scratch at the customer's request. Then there's a whole lot of stuff that's gonna have to happen. Do you get what I'm saying? So there's a difference between project scope, which is the work that has to be done to deliver the deliverable, and product scope. Product scope refers to the features and functions in the deliverable or of the deliverable. So one of the features is chicken sandwich should be this way, or feel this way, or taste this way. It's a product feature. Well, in order to get that feature, or in order to meet those technical requirements, chicken sandwich has to be made from scratch. In order to do that, there's a whole lot of project scope that is needed to fulfill the product scope. So in project management, we don't mess around with scope. Scope is very important. I often say requirements beget scope. Requirements give birth to scope. If you've got the requirements down, you're going to identify what needs to be done to deliver those requirements. If you don't have the requirements down, then you're going to think you've got your scope locked down, only for the requirements to become more apparent, and then you realize, oh dear, we got more work. Yeah, it's not that the work wasn't there in the beginning, you just hadn't identified the requirements properly. You hadn't documented the requirements, you hadn't elicited the requirements. So as a project manager, you want to think about requirements elicitation, getting those requirements drawn out. The word elicit is different from collect. It's not just a collection. If it was a collection, that would be easy because they would just be at the ready. No, the requirements are not at the ready. For many a client, you're going to have to pull it out of them, almost draw it out to see if you're throwing a bucket into a well to draw it out. But not in a coercive or malicious way, more in a collaborative way, drilling down to the deep detail and using your expertise in facilitation to really understand what the customer wants. You see, that's scope management. That's really what it is. Now, after you identify what the customer really wants, it's now clear that the chicken sandwich has to be from scratch and all that stuff. Then you realize, okay, now I can see the customer wants a chicken sandwich from scratch. Well, the chicken sandwich must have taste. So I am going to have to get some salt. The only thing is the salt has to be from scratch. Now that trip to the Atlantic Ocean, we need to schedule it so that I can get salt water, take it back and evaporate it, boil it for hours on end. Well, that's going to take a while. Now, while this sounds humorous, there was someone called Andy George. He has a channel on YouTube, How to Make Everything or something to that effect. And he actually did this same thing I'm telling you about, chicken sandwich from scratch. Cost about $1,500 and tasted like, don't even let's talk about that. But at the end of the day, it just underscored how a simple deliverable, if the requirements are very stringent on a particular set of technical things, technical variables, then it goes from just a simple project to a complex project. And that's why part of scope management involves requirements refinement. You want to refine the requirements to really understand what can be removed and what should be left, and at the end of the day actually take an action to take out the requirements that are no value or may throw a wrench in the project. And that's where the whole idea about defining scope comes in. Defined scope is like a last hurdle to cross to get your requirements refined and locked down. So after your requirements have been refined and locked down and you understand the trip to the Atlantic has to happen because we need salt for the chicken sandwich, and Bessie the cow needs to be grown from scratch. It's crazy. Or brought in. In fact, if you watch his channel, this video, it's something else, but they brought in the cow, got the milk for the mayo. Chicken sandwich needs mayo. All of this stuff has to be scheduled in, and that's where schedule management comes in. So in schedule management, what are you doing? You are scheduling all of these different activities. Going to the Atlantic, the vegetable patch, all the work that needs to go into that. How will that look on the schedule? So on and so forth. All of that stuff is thought about. And that's where schedule management comes in, because your schedule is going to show how long it will take to make this chicken sandwich. Your cost management aspects would be listing out all of these activities or the higher level deliverables, So what do I mean by higher level deliverables? Baking the bun is a deliverable. Growing the vegetable patch, harvesting the lettuce, baking, all the processes, boiling the water to get salt, and the entire process, all of that stuff needs to be scheduled. And when it's scheduled, the next step will be to estimate how much each of those items will cost. And after you've done that, and you identify how much the entire project will be, or maybe you've got a budget that is given to you for the entire project and you have to make it fit. That is also part of cost management, making the budget fit. So there has to be some pull and push and give and take. Some people think it's a one-time thing. Oh, you just fit in all the costs and you've got it. No, that's not how it works. You might go several rounds between cost and scope and schedule, round and round, until your numbers are perfected to some degree. That's how it works. So it works in iterations. So for someone to say, oh, schedule strictly comes before cost, then you never go back. No, that's not true. You do go back and forth, like between your decision to hire Billy, who is an expert, but costs several hundreds per hour, instead of hiring someone cheaper. How did you get to that conclusion? Well, you looked at the resources that were available, and you looked at the schedule. You looked at the trade-off. Well, if you don't get Billy, it's going to take longer. If it takes longer, we're not going to win the award fee or something else, or we're going to be late to market. So there are many decisions that need to be made within the knowledge areas. And by knowledge areas, I'm talking about areas of knowledge like schedule and cost and scope. There are actually 10 of these areas of knowledge. There is scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholder, and integration. Now, if you're studying for the PMP exam or the CAPM exam, or you've been somewhat affiliated with the PMI, all of this stuff will make sense to you. But those of you who are new to it, it's not that big a deal. They're just areas of knowledge that come into play in project management. That's all. So these areas of knowledge need to be planned. You might need to plan how we're going to check quality, or how we're going to communicate, or how we're going to get the resources we need, or when we have the resources we need, how we're going to train them, and how we're going to equip them, and how we're going to manage them, and stuff like that. So all of this stuff has to be planned out. And that's why I encourage project managers to plan, have a project management plan. It's a normal part of project management. So, when you get pushback at work and people are saying, oh, you're planning too much, just let them know that in the project management body of knowledge guide, out of the 49 processes that exist, almost 24 out of the 49 are all about planning, and 2 are about setting the project off to a good footing, initiating. So when you look at it, it's really 26 processes are used to set the pace and tone and get a fuller understanding of what is at play. See, planning is important, and the PMI identifies that. So planning should come, and after you've planned, then you actually have a solid base to execute upon. Get what I'm saying? So don't look at planning as being a second-rate job. planning is king. You ain't got good plan, well, just call it a day. And that's really the basis for project management. That's pretty much it. You think about what you're meant to do, you get a vision, get a roadmap, then you plan, and after you've planned, you execute. Just remember when you're executing that you need to get the right amount of traction so that you get the right reaction from people working with you on the project, from people, your team members who may have one task or another. You need to keep them motivated and inspired. So you always need to keep them in remembrance of the goals, the objectives, why you're doing what you're doing. If people remember the purpose, it's a lot better than if they just feel they're working for no good reason. So keep reminding them. For example, one of the clients that I have is in healthcare, and they're making huge changes to lives at the local level, changing lives at the local level out there in Houston, doing an awesome thing. I mean, I was so sold into what they were doing, just looking at their projects. They're really affecting lives. That's one example. And then we have other clients also in healthcare that are doing other things out in New York, making huge impacts on lives. But I know not every project is out there in healthcare affecting lives in that way. But as a project manager, you need to ask the question, what's the bottom line of what we're doing, and why should the team care? Why should the team feel like they are doing anything of relevance? What are they doing that is of relevance should be the question. If you can trace it back to any factors or variables that are worthwhile, and there's always a worthwhile reason, but if you can trace it back and make it real and help them to appreciate the project they're working on, even if it's for a stakeholder, it's adding value to the stakeholder, be it internal or external, So let them think about the why behind the why, share it with them, and that will get a better level of engagement and traction from your team. That's what I would advise. And from there, you monitor and control the project. You make sure you're not going off your target. If you miss one milestone, do everything possible to make sure that milestone is back in alignment, back on track. See, that's what project managers do. So for those of you who may have wondered, what do PMs do? I'd like to know more. Well, I hope this gives you some guidelines and some ideas, and I hope this helps you to see that you have probably been a project manager in some degree yourself. The final stage of project management, after initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling to make sure you don't go off track, it's closing out the project. So in closing out the project, you want to make sure that your customer, your client, has already accepted the deliverable. So before you get to the end, while you're still monitoring and controlling the project, part of monitoring and controlling is asking in increments, is this part of the deliverable good? Is this part good? So when it's assembled, if it's on assembly, or when the project comes to an end, you're not going to have unexpected rejection. So all through the project, you should touch base with your client. There are many different sayings. One of them is fail fast. One of them is, another of them is fail forward. You want to fail forward. So you want to fail fast so that you can use that as leverage to fail forward or to move forward. If you fail and you realize lessons learned, then you get better. You move forward. And it's an unending cycle of fail, do. And that's just how it is. So in project management, at the end of the project, we assemble all the lessons learned. We make sure that the customer has accepted the deliverables. We make sure the paperwork is in place. We could even do a test. At the end of each phase, there should actually be reviews of what went well, what didn't go so well, how can we do better. There could be retrospectives depending on the world you're in, but you can look back. You know, they say hindsight is 20/20, so at the end of every phase, look back, what could we have done better? Oh, we could have done this. Okay, then do it in the next phase. So it's a lesson to be learned, and you learn it when you actually do it in the next opportunity or phase. All right, so that's just a quick 101 for you of project management, and I hope it helped you, and I wish you all the very best in your project management journey. Remember, Praizion.com is the website where you can get training, coaching, and help in your project management. We've got a whole lot of curricula out there that you can take a look at and select whichever one suits you. Project management basics, agile, or the deeper world of project management for the PMP exam. www.praizion.com. Best wishes and bye for now.